Until this point in your unit planning, you have been very concrete. You've been very pragmatic. You've described very specific actions that will be taken and a very specific product that will be produced. And that is good. You need to be super concrete and super specific when you're starting out, because you cannot arrive to a goal that you do not very clearly envision and plan for. Now is the moment for you more esoteric folks. Now is a moment where you get to take a step back and think about your public product, what they are working toward, and ask yourself, what is the deeper life meaning of what we're doing? If you've chosen an appropriate public product, it has probably several ways that it can be looked at and talked about as deeply meaningful in our lives. So you're going to have two rules for developing a driving question, but I want you to think of the driving question as giving the deeper meaning to this. What meaning, what significance does this unit of learning, this transformative learning experience have in our human lives? Why is this a transformative experience? There's lots of right answers. There's no one right, one wrong answer. There's lots of right answers. But your answer needs to follow the two rules in order to make sure you've touched on the kind of depth that you're capable of here. And the reason is that we need to honor our learners by facilitating their exploration of the meaning of existence, the meaning of who they are and how they are in the world. And not only by having them do superficial exercises to gain skills. We will gain skills and there will be a lot of concrete that we're doing, but we want to be attaching it to a deeper part of our humanity that we are exploring. So the two rules that you're going to follow in developing a question, again, there's no right question, and you may come up with several valid ones. Just pick one to be the driving one. Just pick the one that compels you, that speaks to you, and picture this question on giant butcher paper hanging across the wall of the room while you're learning. You may literally do that. I recommend it. You may put it on your Zoom background if you teach online. This is what we are pondering. This is what we are exploring in our existence. So think about it that way. And then you will know it is a good question if it abides by these two rules. One is that I cannot Google the answer to it. I don't mean I cannot Google anyone writing about it, but I cannot Google it and read and study and then know what the answer is. For example, sometimes people will pick a question like, what is a healthy versus an unhealthy diet? That is knowable information. There are people who have degrees in that. If I read a good couple of books or a couple of articles, or I have enough life experience, I know the answer to that. There's a right and a wrong answer. It's ultimately Googleable. It's complicated, but it's Googleable. Another one that people will sometimes pick is, this is a very common approach. How can I do well in my language class? Or how can I create a play? So a very common mistake that people make here is that they've come up with a public product idea, like my persuasive TikTok video, and then they will ask a question like, how can I create a persuasive TikTok video? Well, if we're going to do it in this unit, then we're going to know how to do it. So it's a knowable answer. So that's not interesting at all. That doesn't touch on anything deeper about us as humans or about our lives. So do not do that. It should not be something that I can learn on Google. It should not be something I can go and learn and know the answer to. It is an open question. It is a deep question. It is an eternal question. And speaking of eternal, the other rule is this question must be relevant to my life and interesting to me when I am 9 years old and when I am 90 years old. If you pick a question that is interesting for little kids, but not engaging for adults, then it doesn't work. Then it's not deep. It's not about human existence. If you pick something that 45-year-olds care about, but 9-year-olds do not care about, then it is not deep. If you ask, for example, how do I put together a safe and profitable stock portfolio. 9-year-olds are out. They don't care about that. If you say, again, learnable information, but something like, how will I go through puberty? Or how will I change as I grow up? When I'm 90, I already know the answer to that. So it's interesting and compelling to me when I'm 9 and when I'm 90. Here are some examples to throw out. You can use these if they speak to you, but you pick something along these lines that's relevant for your curriculum. What is our relationship to the earth beneath our feet? How can we be good caretakers of the animal kingdom? What does it mean to be a good friend? Can we forgive people who have hurt us? Or how can we forgive people who have hurt us? Or how will we know if we have impacted those around us in a positive way? These are questions that a 9-year-old could talk about, a 49-year-old could talk about, and a 90-year-old could talk about for hours. They're deep. There's no obvious answer. You could read about them. You could buy book after book after book talking about them. But the answer, nobody can say, I know that. If you've gotten that kind of a question, you're at the depth, the meaning of your project. Once you've identified that, you can integrate it into everything you're going to plan next as you're doing your backwards planning to help ensure that this is a truly transformative and meaningful experience for all of your learners.